French Revolution. Part 2. France abolishes monarchy and becomes a republic. In April 1792, the National Assembly voted for a war against Prussia and Austria. Marseillaise became the national anthem of France. While men were away fighting at the war, women took care of their families. Large sections of the population demanded that the revolution had to be carried further, as the Constitution of 1791 gave political rights only to the richer sections of society. Political clubs were formed and among them, Jacobins became the most successful club. Members of the Jacobin Club included small shopkeepers, artisans such as shoemakers, pastry cooks, watchmakers, printers, as well as servants and daily wage workers. Jacobin members started wearing long striped trousers similar to those worn by dock workers. These Jacobins were called the sans-culottes, literally meaning, those without knee breeches. On August 10, 1792, Jacobins stormed the palace of the Tuileries and held the king hostage for several hours. Elections were held and all men of 21 years and above got the right to vote. Monarchy was abolished on the 21st of September 1792 and France was declared a republic. Louis XVI was sentenced to death by a court on the charge of treason. The Reign of Terror. The period from 1793 to 1794 is referred to as the Reign of Terror. People whom Robespierre saw enemies of the Republic were arrested, imprisoned and then tried by a revolutionary tribunal. If they were declared guilty by the court, then they were guillotined. The guillotine is a device consisting of two poles and a blade with which a person is beheaded, named after Dr. Guillotine. Laws were issued to place a maximum ceiling on wages and prices. Meat and bread were rationed. Expensive white flour was forbidden to use. Equality was practiced through forms of speech and address. All French men and women were addressed as citoyen and citoyenne, citizen. In July 1794, he was convicted by a court, arrested and the next day sent to the guillotine. A directory rules France. Fall of the Jacobin government allowed the wealthier middle classes to seize power. According to the new constitution, non-propertied sections of society denied voting. It provided for 2 elected legislative councils. The government appointed a directory, consisting of executives made up of 5 members. Political instability paved the way for a military dictator, Napoleon Bonaparte. Did women have a revolution? Women were active participants from the beginning, which brought important changes in the country France. Women from the third estate had to work for a living and they didn't have access to education or job training. Daughters of nobles of the third estate were allowed to study at a convent. Working women also had to care for their families. Compared to men, their wages were lower. Women also started their political clubs and newspapers. The Society of Revolutionary and Republican Women was one of the most famous women's clubs. They demanded equal political rights as men, the right to vote and to hold political office. The revolutionary government introduced laws to improve the lives of women. Schooling became compulsory, divorce made legal and they could run small businesses. During the Reign of Terror, the government closed women's clubs, banning their political activities. After much struggle, women in France in 1946 won the right to vote. The abolition of slavery. Jacobin regime's most revolutionary social reform was the abolition of slavery in the French colonies. In the 17th century, slavery trade began. Slaves were brought from local chieftains, branded and shackled and were packed tightly into ships for the 3-month-long voyage across the Atlantic to the Caribbean. Slave labor met the growing demand in European markets for sugar, coffee, and indigo. Throughout the 18th century, there was little criticism of slavery in France. In 1794, the Convention legislated to free all slaves in the French overseas possessions. Napoleon introduced slavery after 10 years. In 1848, slavery was abolished in French colonies. The Revolution and everyday life. France during 1789 saw changes in the lives of men, women and children. Abolition of censorship happened in the summer of 1789. Declaration of the Rights of Man and Citizen proclaimed freedom of speech and expression to be a natural right. Freedom of press meant opposing views of events could be expressed. Plays, songs and festive processions attracted large numbers of people. Conclusion. Napoleon Bonaparte crowned himself Emperor of France in 1804 and introduced many laws such as the protection of private property and a uniform system of weights and measures provided by the decimal system. Napoleon was defeated at Waterloo in 1815. The ideas of liberty and democratic rights were the most important legacy of the French Revolution. Colonized peoples reworked on the idea of freedom to create a sovereign nation-state. Thanks for watching. Do like, share and subscribe.